What's good, YouTube? LTTV Combat Sports. For those that are new, I talk boxing, MMA, and everything in between. If you rock with combat sports content, feel free to hit that sub button and vibe with the channel. I came across this news a few days ago, but I've kind of held off on making the video because I don't know if it was relevant or not, but I figured I'd bring it to you guys' attention. Apparently, one Ronda Rousey is contemplating coming back to the sport of mixed martial arts. Now, she kind of hinted at this on her social media when she admitted she was finding her love for mixed martial arts again. The immortal Matt Brown, he is against the idea of Ronda coming back to the sport after 8 years away from the sport. He states the following: "We know everyone will get behind bringing Ronda Rousey back," Brown said on the latest episode of The Fighter versus the Writer. "As big of a star as she was, yeah, everybody will be all about it, whether they love her or hate her. We'll watch 100%. But I would say the same thing with Conor McGregor. You cannot take that time off and expect to come back at a high level. Everybody else is working every day. This isn't 1998 anymore, where you can just kind of be a fighter in training camp and then chill and then come back. We're not even talking about that. We're talking about years off. She'll get destroyed. Maybe they'll find a matchup for her, like a Beth Correa type or something," Brown said. "There's still those girls out there in those divisions, unfortunately. But no, you can't take that kind of time off. There's a point where you've got to say, I'm done. I've spent enough time away from the sport that coming back is not going to be a good option for me anymore. And Ronda's past that point for sure. She's got to know it too." End quote. I have to agree with Matt Brown on that. Not to say that she'll get destroyed or anything. 'Cause who knows? Maybe she would. Maybe she won't get destroyed. I'm not here to go all into that detail. But when you take 8+ years away from the sport and you decide, you found the love again, it kind of doesn't make any sense to want to come back after taking that amount of time off. Now, I do understand that fighters get that infamous fighter's itch and they want to scratch that itch. Just because you found the love for MMA again, it doesn't mean that you should come back. Sometimes you finding the love again for the sport is just that. You kind of, will fall back into it. You may watch it a little bit more from a distance, admire or watch the younger fighters coming up. But coming back to the sport as an active fighter, getting back in the testing pool, getting back into fight shape, and do all the things that necessary to, be in tip-top condition to train for a fight for 3 to 5 rounds. And she's 38, going to 39 years old, 2 kids. I really don't see the use of her trying to come back to the sport. She was the first woman inducted in the UFC Hall of Fame back in 2018. So her legacy and everything that she put into the game is stamped. No one can take it away from her. So should she come back to the sport? Personally, I wouldn't bother. It doesn't make a lot of sense because you have the game and women who are still in it have evolved a lot since 2016, which was the last year she was in a cage fighting anybody. Now, if she had came back in 2020 or even 2021, cool. But from 2016, which was her last fight against Amanda Nunes, and we're all the way in 2025. That's a long gap in layoffs. Now you have fighters like GSP who came back after a 4-year layoff, and he did his thing against Michael Bisping. And you had Dominic Cruz who took a 3.5-year layoff. He beat TJ Dillashaw. But a 3-4 year layoff is not that bad. As crazy as it sounds, compared to an 8-9 year layoff. So I want to put this in its proper context. A 3-4 year layoff is not the same as an 8+ year layoff from mixed martial arts. It's not the same. Yeah, you may get a little rusty. Yeah, sure. But coming back to the sport after being away for 7, 6, 8, 9+ years, all that time that you missed, it catches up to you. So I get where Matt is coming from, and I understand it. Now, would the UFC want to see her back? They might, because Ronda is still a big name. That can never be disputed, whether how you feel about her as a person or even as a fighter. So would they entertain that? Maybe they would, maybe they won't. But if you are Dana White, Sean Shelby, and others, you kind of left the Ronda Rousey era behind back in 2016. And you kind of move on. So I personally, I'm not exactly for it, but I'm not against it either. However, I'm very much indifferent. It doesn't bother me either way, whether she comes back or not. Now, should she do it? Like I've stated, no. But Ronda's going to do what Ronda's going to do. And no one can say otherwise. Demetrius Johnson, and that's the only former fighter that I know of that's kind of giving her support if she does decide to scratch that fighter's itch and come back to the octagon after so much time she's been away from the game. I don't know what other fighters have given her support outside of him, to my knowledge, but she'll get a lot of support from those in MMA, men and women, if she decided she want to come back. However, sometimes it's best to leave under your own power. You see fighters, they kind of overstate their welcome. They stay in the game too long, and you see them being a shell of their old self. And you see that all the time, whether it's MMA or boxing. You should hang it up. You stick around longer than you should have, for the crowd and the attention, the spotlight, etc., when you should have hung it up 4, 5, 6 years ago. Ronda, even though she was dominant in her time in the game, she left with her faculties in check. Yeah, she's had multiple concussions during her combat sports career by her own admission. That's part of the reason why she stepped away from combat sports entirely. And I don't blame her for that, because concussions in combat sports, that happens more times than not. But a lot of fighters may or may not admit that for whatever reason. But she admitted that those concussions, they took a toll, and she had to leave the sport, which I'm fully supportive of, because when you're in the combat sports and you getting hit in the head consistently, those concussions, those add up. So, you don't want to take too much punishment to the head, because the head is not really meant to be hit in the first place. So I salute Ronda for leaving the game when she did. So it leads me back to the contemplating the comeback, or even teasing it. Yeah, you found the love again, but just because you found the love for the sport doesn't mean that you should want to come back to it after sustaining so many concussions during your career. To me, it's kind of ludicrous, in my personal opinion. I don't see why would the UFC entertain it. Yes, I mean, Ronda is still a name in the game that you can say, oh, it's Ronda Rousey. You still recognize her and look back at her old fights from Strikeforce and even in the UFC. So you know who she is. But her time has came in long past. So truth be told, I don't think the UFC should entertain it. I don't think fight fans should entertain it either, because Ronda had her time, and honestly, she showed dominance when she was in her prime. But when she went up against the Holly Holmes and the Amanda Nunes of the world, we saw what happened, and ultimately, she retired from the sport. But I want to get you guys' thoughts. Do you think Ronda Rousey should return if she does decide to win a comeback after 8-9 years away from the sport? Or should she just go about her family life and enjoy that and continue to thrive outside of fighting? Let me know what you guys think in the comment section down below. And that's going to be a wrap for this video. Until next time, stay sharp, stay fighting. I'm LTTV Combat Sports. I'm out.